Hello, everyone, and thank you for attending today's webinar, Bridging the Sales Productivity Gap, which is being presented by Forbes Insights and Brainshark. Today we have with us Joe Gustafson, the CEO of Brainshark, as well as Jeff McKittrick, the Director of Sales Enablement at Cisco Systems. I'm Steve Diorio, your host. I'm Chief Analyst of the Forbes CMO practice. I'd like Joe and Jeff to introduce themselves. Joe, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, Steve. Thanks. Hi, everyone. I'm Joe Gustafson, the CEO and founder of Brainshark. At Brainshark, we provide sales enablement solutions that help companies harness the power of content for faster training, better coaching, and ultimately help reps have more successful sales conversations. So this topic of sales productivity is something that's very near and dear to our hearts.
And Jeff?
Good morning. This is Jeff McKittrick. I lead sales enablement, particularly around sales productivity tools and content efficiency and enablement for Cisco. I sit inside of the sales organization, but I partner closely together with my marketing counterparts, my IT teams, and the generators of sales training and sales demonstrations and proposals to serve out our audience of 20,000 Cisco sales reps, but also the tens of thousands of sales professionals working inside of our partner organizations.
Joe and Jeff, thanks for joining us today. Before we begin, we wanted to cover a few housekeeping items. At the bottom of your audience console, you'll see a number of different widgets that you can use throughout the broadcast. If you have any questions during the broadcast, you can click on the Q&A widget at the bottom and submit your question. We plan to answer these questions at the end of the broadcast, so please feel free to submit questions at any point during the webinar. If a fuller answer is needed, or we run out of time, your question will be answered later via email. We do capture all questions. You can expand your slide area by clicking on the Maximize icon at the top right of the slide area or by dragging the bottom right corner of the slide area. If you have any technical difficulties, please click on the Help widget. It has a question mark and covers common technical issues. An on-demand version of this webcast will be available approximately 2 days after the webcast. Great. So now that we've covered that, let's get started.
So why are we here today? Well, sales forecasting today is a little bit like spinning the roulette wheel. Research shows that as much as 47% of forecasted sales opportunities never close. So that's like your sales reps walking into their manager and saying, hey, listen, boss, this deal's going to close, trust me, but less than half actually do. So you're actually better off going to Vegas and betting on red or black, and you really can't run your business like that. So these are really just symptoms. Really what the issue is and what we're seeing is it's an issue of sales productivity. Now, what do we mean by sales productivity? This is one of those questions that you can ask a number of different companies and get a number of different answers. Typically you might hear something like, well, we need to increase or improve our onboarding, and that is get those sales reps onboarded and trained faster so they can close their first deal earlier. It could be shortening sales cycles, or it could be cross-selling. Lots of companies are adding new products, and they're buying new companies for their product sets, and they're making the assumption that they can just put those products into the bag of salespeople and they'll merrily go sell them away. Well, that's really not the case. But really at the end of the day, when you look at sales productivity, I think everyone can agree on it. It basically comes down to revenue per rep. And improving this is a big challenge for a lot of companies. I think it's important to take a look at why that is. So companies, build their business models on quotas. And, unfortunately, in reality, when you look across the organization, not everyone is delivering exactly as we planned it out, right? We've got B players, and these are solid, sales reps that we've got. We like them. We think they've got great promise for the company, but they don't always deliver on time. Some of the time, most of the time, but not consistently all the time. Unfortunately, we've also got C players, and these are challenged reps, and they may not be in the right job, and we should probably think about managing them out of the business. But fortunately, we've also got those coveted A players, and these are the ones that deliver and knock the cover off the ball, deliver the number all the time, add high value to customers, and we certainly wish every one of them was like that. But unfortunately, most of our reps, anywhere between 55 and 70% of the time, are generally missing the number. And then we call that the sales productivity gap. We want to get those B players and move them up to quota, or even better, up towards the A players. So to do that, I think it's not that helpful to look at what are the B players doing wrong. I think it's better to look at, what are the A players doing right. And really what the A players are doing right is they're having more valuable conversations, delivering more value to customers. Forrester found some interesting research. They went out and asked executive buyers how to scorecard their conversations with sellers. And what came back was that only 11% of those sales calls added value or were effective. So that means 9 out of 10 sales calls were a waste of time. So to improve that productivity, what we really should be doing is looking at how do we add more value to these sales conversations. To do that, I think we should go back and look at that productivity question again. And really, if our objective is how do we increase yield, there's basically 2 dials that we've got. One is around efficiency, and how do we make sales reps more efficient and streamlined in their business. And the second is around effectiveness. If you look at efficiency, if you assume a 40-hour work week, unfortunately, not all of that time is spent by sales reps actually selling. There's all kinds of non-productive, non-customer time that gets absorbed out in the field. And what we want to try and do is streamline that. And there are lots of good products that we've been using to help do that. Things like streamlining commissions or expenses or configure price and quote. But really what we're doing is we're trading 1 hour of sales reps downtime, if you will, for another hour of selling. And that's good, But in today's environment, that's really going to not move the needle for us. What we need to do is we need to focus on how do we help sales reps get better at what they do. And to do that, we think you need to look at things like better and faster and onboarding, continuous learning, how you get the right content to the right salespeople at the same time, how you focus on more engaging, content-driven conversations, and certainly analytics. Jeff, I know you've got a lot of experience over at Cisco. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Hey, Joe. It's an excellent point of framing it up, and particularly in the effectiveness and where we see we're getting the bigger returns is 2 areas we focused on, one in the sales content management and then also moving into the analytics. So we're out now across over 45,000 users between Cisco's and our partners. And one study we recently ran was by bringing together and reducing the places that people go to look for content and getting the right content in front of the reps to conduct those effective conversations you mentioned earlier, reps are now able to find the 5 key pieces of content that they need in what was 17 minutes using all the different search tools and trusting and having to build their own presentations is now down to 3 minutes. And now where we're pivoting to is in that analytics space is saying, what are the top reps, or your A players? What content are they using and what's the impact that that's having on the customer buying cycle? Are customers buying more? Are they able to upsell, cross-sell? And then how do we make sure that we promote that top content that's being used across the rest of the population to help them up their game?
Oh, that's terrific. Thanks, Jeff. Let me just finish up here with my segment and then turn this over to Steve for a few minutes. It's these kinds of issues that Jeff was talking about and the challenges that I just outlined that led us to work with Forbes. We wanted to know what leading companies like Cisco and Jeff are doing to attack this issue. So with that, let me turn that over to Steve. And Steve, if you could run through some of these terrific insights you achieved, that would be great.
Thanks so much, Joe. My name is Stephen DiOrio. I'm somewhat of an expert in sales enablement. I've written a book, and I've been helping organizations try to improve sales performance over the last 25 years. I worked with the Forbes team as well as subject matter experts like Jeff in order to find some new, more insightful answers to the very good question that Joe is posing. How can we improve sales productivity? We surveyed 216 senior-level executives by leveraging Forbes' access and credibility. So we also worked with subject matter experts, including Jeff at Cisco and his sales enablement peers at Xerox, GE, and Salesforce.com, as well as tapping into the expertise of CSO Insights and Serious Decisions. What we learned was there were 5 keys to dialing up the effectiveness that Joe was talking about and closing the sales productivity gap between the A players who do it well and the B and C players on your team. The first finding was that most executives believe that sales productivity is critical to their success. In fact, the more senior the executive, the more important it was. 71% of the C-level executives that we interviewed believes that sales productivity is critical to achieving growth. Hard to find a CEO who would not say that growing more for less was critical. But the challenge is, CEOs don't really care about the tools and tactics behind this, but they certainly care about the outcomes. The most finding we had was that the executives, the senior executives, think that sales productivity is more important than product excellence, quality of execution, operational excellence, and from a marketing perspective, sales productivity was more important than their massive investments in brand building and marketing effectiveness. In 2000, Jim Tracy wrote a book called The Discipline of Market Leaders. And in that book, he asked an important question. What one thing are you going to be great at? He gave us 3 choices: operational excellence, customer experience, or product excellence. His main point was you've got to figure out what your organization is going to be excellent at. You can't be great at everything, but you can win by being excellent at one thing. This data that Forbes uncovered suggests that more and more executives need to be asking that question about sales productivity. The next thing was alignment. And what we found out decisively was that organizations that aligned sales and marketing were much more effective. We broke our sample into effective companies against the rest. We took the top 10% of organizations that were beating their sales goals, that said their productivity was high, and were doing all the right things to deliver sales enablement, and we peeled them off into a leader segment. If you look at this data, it shows that 74% of the leading firms report they have very good alignment between their sales and marketing departments. We also broke them into quadrants, and the laggards were reporting poor alignment at a very high level. Now, sales and marketing alignment is certainly above. Findings are suggesting is that it makes a big difference. What's important is that it goes beyond a buzzword or good intentions, and we create connective tissue, real organizational, structural, measurement, process, and technology ways that sales and marketing have to work better together. Jeff McKittrick has 5 years of experience working to find ways to get the complex marketing and sales department at Cisco working together. I thought he'd want to share some of the ways they're creating connective tissues with editorial boards, measurements, processes, and teams. Jeff, do you want to share that?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. It's definitely as part of that journey all the way along for those last 5 years. It started with getting our marketing organizations and where the rubber meets the road at, where content's being created, what content's going to be created, and then where does it get placed and put in front of the reps. And for us, it's also around when it goes out, does it get used, and and even mechanisms for people to rate, comment, and give back the information for marketing so they can continue to make better content, and we can see how it's working for the reps. So it's a weekly cadence for us, meetings of teams that come together that have the charter of, what's upcoming for product launches, solution launches, major events, make sure that content's getting created in a way that we know works for the field and that we're putting it out and we're measuring it back. And also the removing of old content or the editing of bad content so that we get the right stuff in front. So it's key to be partnered together with marketing in a real rigorous operating model that makes that the most effective for us.
And thanks, Jeff. And to reinforce that point, sales enablement initiatives are highly correlated with good sales and marketing alignment. As we see here, 61% of the organizations with sales enablement programs in place, like Jeff's, are reporting good alignment between sales and marketing. Finding was that content is the secret ingredient to sales effectiveness. What do we mean by this? Well, it shouldn't be any surprise. When we asked executives what investments were driving sales productivity, the three top answers were all content related. Answer number one, I want relevant messages. It has to be relevant to the client, not to me, or else they won't respond. Answer number two, the content has to communicate value in conversations with the client at the front, the middle, and the back of the sales funnel. And third, it had to have the right context. It had to have strategic context, meaning that it must be relevant to a particular selling situation. Our experts agreed. Dan Smoot, who runs sales effectiveness at Salesforce.com, says we need to focus on valuable conversations with customers. And Nicholas Lihu, who runs sales enablement at Xerox, says we have to develop content that is targeted so we could get it into those selling situations. The experts at Corporate Executive Board, who talk about challenger selling, or CSO Insights, who talk about value selling, or Corporate Visions, who talk about value conversations, all reinforce the importance of content that supports value conversations. Big questions executives need to ask. The first one is, what content works? The second one is, how do I get it to sales? And the third is, how do I ensure that it gets used? Jeff, I know that you've got several years' experience trying to answer these questions. Would you care to chime in and talk a little bit about how well you guys have addressed these questions?
Sure, Steve. Well, first, it's and having a background in sales as well here at Cisco, it's around can I find it easily? Is it on point, or do I have to do a bunch of editing to get it right for my type of customer, whether it be the industry or what type of buyer am I talking to, or maybe I'm not talking to my traditional IT buyer where we see us moving out to the different lines of business that you talk to. It's, can I find that content? And really, the third bullet here around delivering it via the CRM, tying it together with my opportunities and where we're even moving into the leads. How does that content find me based on where I'm going and where I'm talking to the buyer? But it is to that value conversation with the customer. It's about tuning your content. So, for example, we now have places where we message, I'm selling to a particular industry, and maybe it's manufacturing, and then you look at what's the outcome a buyer in that might be into. More efficiency out of their factory, less downtime, more productivity through, and tailoring those messages so that you can deliver them in the moment, and also find them via the mobile in case you're in the field and a new competitor shows up or you get asked about a competitor. Being able to be on point with how your solutions differentiate against your competitor and having that knowledge at your fingertips is a great way to make those reps more effective.
Thanks, Jeff. And I want to reiterate, Forbes has done a number of studies, and one study that I'm sharing the data officers, and the bottom line from that study is virtually everything on the executive growth agenda is impacted by content. Developing the brand, sales effectiveness, targeting analytics strategies, selling value to the customer. So there seems to be a consensus around the executives driving growth that content drives growth. So content is the secret ingredient. I think that's one of the more compelling findings from the study. Aha, is that consistency drives productivity. Consistency of delivering value messages and selling stories at the point of engagement, whether it's an email chat, a service conversation, a sales conversation, a partner conversation, is critical to sales effectiveness. And our benchmarks show that the leaders are 2 times more consistent than the laggards. There are no silver bullets here. Agree that selling value drives great growth outcomes. It increases margin, price, conversion rate, and differentiation. So the big question that executives, how do you make it easier and bulletproof for the B and C players in your sales force to sell value over price and be more consistent in their execution? Now the final finding relates to technology. And the big thing we found is the common thread across all technologies. So there are lots of different technologies people can buy. Joe and Jeff profiled some of them. There are many things that you've already purchased and are using today in your organization to improve efficiency and effectiveness. One of the underlying themes that we pulled out of the Forbes research was that if you focus that investment on increasing speed, it will drive productivity. For example, 4 out of the 5 top sales productivity challenges relate to speed. Take a look at the people are investing in technology to cut the time it takes for reps to close new deals, to onboard new reps, to shorten sales cycle, to shorten the time wasted searching for content. The bottom line is, what do these all have in common? What they have in common is they make things go faster. So effective sales organizations, rather than going after these individual efficiency elements, are trying overall to make their technology portfolio accelerate speed from a process perspective. So, of sales technology is solutions that provide integrated content, training, and coaching to reps and their managers. And if your sales enablement portfolio drives speed and connectivity, 2 of the themes that we've talked about today, you're going to move the needle on both efficiency and, more importantly, effectiveness. What the most important results they want from their sales enablement technologies? They said having value conversations, differentiating our products, getting sales reps up to speed and trained faster, and making it easier to create and deliver high-quality sales content. Chat about how organizations like yours are combining your technology portfolios. You've certainly bought a lot of technology to try to simplify and streamline the sales experience so reps can find what they need, marketing can target it, and that it can be delivered through the same place consistently and easily. Can you talk a little bit about what you've learned in your experience?
Sure, Steve. And you're right. A company the size of Cisco, or even companies that are probably a lot smaller, probably have a smattering of technologies. We kind of quit counting at 20 and 30 plus different content repositories of where content was at. So first it was, did people know where to go, or how did we start to shut off some of the content places where people were posting and making it confusing for all the maintenance of the content? So we actually saw huge efficiencies for marketing in that content didn't need to have all the effort and the manual touches to keep content updated in multiple places. So by putting it in a single repository and publishing to the handful of 2 or 3 places, whether it be the mobile technologies that we want to get to, publishing into our CRM, in Cisco's case, this is Salesforce.com, and also onto the 1 or 2 internal sites, really took down a lot of complexity for marketing, but on the sales rep side, helped them know that there were a single place they needed to go, and they knew that they could trust it. The content was always fresh, and when you had that central publishing, you could also use the technology to take down or expire the old version, so you weren't chasing through versioning or old messaging. So tying all that together, and then for our reps, really bring it together in my CRM, and so when I'm creating an opportunity or updating an opportunity, go ahead and just give me the latest content based on what technology solution am I selling, or maybe who my competitors I've flagged. And for our partners, we do that as well through our quoting platform. So big gains there for now create your opportunity, then start your content quest, but bring the workflow together for them. And they always know that they've got the latest messaging to go have that right customer conversation.
Hey, Jeff, thanks. I think the big message here is in a world of silver bullets that can improve sales efficiency, the winners are going to build systems that blend people, process, and technology into sales enablement programs that can drive effectiveness. So it's no surprise when we asked executives what their sales productivity investment priorities were, sales enablement technology, as defined by solutions that provide integrated content, training, and coaching to the reps and their managers, meaning it does many things and supports the process that Jeff just outlined, was right at the top. More important than, but leveraging analytics, CRM, mobile, social, and learning technologies, many of which exist inside the organization. So what I'd like to do now is hand it back to Joe so he can talk about what we need to do in our organizations to take action on some of these findings. Joe?
Thank you, Steve. Let me just see if I can leave us with a few tactics that you can use and apply right away in your organization to improve sales productivity. I've really nailed it down to five tactics, and we've been talking about many of these all the way through this webinar. The first one is around onboarding, and many companies look at their onboarding and say, well, a rep will start in day one, and it may not be 4, 5, or 6 weeks before they head off to class. Really what we should be doing is eliminating that downtime or that gap between when they start and when they really start getting their learnings in, by flipping the classroom, if you will, and that is that day one, sales reps should be exposed to solid e-learning courses that are covering the basics of product, the industry, the challenges that customers have. So by the time they get to those classrooms, they can be focusing in on key things like role-playing and mentoring sessions and talking to experts that are out in the field every day to get that real high value that you need to get from those one-on-one or those classroom situations. But it doesn't stop there. The learning has to continue for a number of reasons. One is we forget things, right? After about 6 months, we know that people forget about 90% of what they learned. So we need to refresh that. A second thing is that the world is changing. We've got new products that are being introduced. Our competitors are introducing new products. Regulations, the industry is changing. So we need sales reps to continue to be up to speed to make sure that they are enabled to have that value conversations that both Steve and Jeff have been talking about. And then the third thing is on the continuous learning is that we just have to recognize that salespeople are just different animals. They don't like to spend their entire day learning things. They like to learn in very short chunks off of their phone, whether it's in the parking lot or in the lobby or in the airport. So continuous learning is something that's really very, very important, and we need to leverage technologies, particularly mobile ones, to do that. The next is on buyer engagement. And what I mean by that is, we get fewer at-bats today with our sales reps in front of their customers. So when we do get those precious few times, we have to really put our best foot forward. Not only do we need to lead a more engaging conversation, but we need to leverage the right content. You've heard Steve and Jeff talk a lot about the value of content. And it's used in so many places, right, from learning, from using it with a customer, and having those engaging conversations where if a buyer takes a left turn during the meeting, the sales rep can use technology and content to respond, to have that higher value conversation. The next is coaching, and I personally think this is something really important in how we can help move the needle. If you think about many companies, sales reps are promoted into a manager job because they're a really good manager. It doesn't mean that they know how to manage. It doesn't mean they have the skills or the predilection to do it, or even they want to do it. So I think that we can really move the needle by doing a couple of things. One is helping coaches be better coaches, right, or helping managers understand what the heck coaching is all about anyway. And then giving them tools and technologies to do a number of things. One is to help their reps be better at delivering these conversations. So to help them see best practice pitches and then try it on their own so they can be graded and evaluated. And then the next is just giving managers better information, which leads us into the final piece, which is analytics. So if managers have a better idea of what sales reps are doing, what kinds of conversations they're having, managers can't be on every sales call, but they want to know what's going on out there. So if we use content, for instance, as a proxy for the conversation, we can understand what conversations sales reps and buyers are having. We can tie that to stages of the sale. We can tie that to what kinds of content are being used. So this whole issue around analytics, I think, is at the end of the day going to be the biggest change in how we sell today. If you think about how marketing has been dramatically changed over the last few years with marketing automation and the internet, we know what buyers are interested in to the nth degree. But sales is still pretty much a black hole. And I think that if we start to use richer, more interactive, digital, trackable content, along with tools and technologies that help reps deliver that and use it, we will be able to gather all kinds of information of what's happening with sales reps in the field and then correlate that to what happens in movement in the sales cycle and what are final results. So here are just a few things to think about when you go back to your organization and try and tackle things like sales productivity. All right. Well, with that, let's close the webinar portion out of this. I'd like to remind everyone that we'd be happy to make available to you the research report on the power of enablement that Brainshark conducted with Forbes Insights. I'd like to thank Steve DiOrio from Forbes Insights. Terrific job, Steve, running through this great analysis. And Jeff McKittrick, thank you very much for taking time out of your day to join us with some terrific comments on what's going on over at Cisco. And with that, I would like to turn this over to the audience. If anyone has questions, please poll in right now.
Thanks a lot, Joe. It's Steve DiOrio here. What we'd like to do now is field some questions. So please go to your tab and ask us any and all questions. We finished early. We've got a lot of time. I've got a number of questions here. And the first question I'd like to point towards Joe. Joe, one of the attendees asked, we talked a little bit towards the end about sales enablement technology and how leading companies are investing. What are you seeing in the market, Joe, right now in regards to sales enablement solutions and the space as a whole?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. We're seeing a lot of activity out there right now. We're seeing, a lot of interest from customers. So the buyers themselves are looking at lots of different technologies and ways to solve it. Across the market itself, we're also seeing quite a bit of new company formation and investment. I think there's a lot of innovative ideas coming out across a wide variety of areas, whether it's in the learning space or engagement or sales asset management or coaching. So we're seeing a lot of good ideas, a lot of new funding and products being formed. We also, though, are seeing a little confusion in the market. I think customers and practitioners are looking to solve the problem, and they're not exactly sure where to start. And one common thing that we're seeing from companies also is that, with that confusion and a number of different players, what they're looking for is they would prefer to work with less vendors and not more. They would prefer to have products that tend to work together and ones that they can get under total cost of ownership. So a lot of good stuff happening, but a lot of activity as well. And I'm sure Jeff can add to that now or later on if he likes.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. I was just going to jump in there a little bit. As a customer, I would definitely agree with everything that you gave there kind of for sentiment. When we started this journey, 3 to 5 years ago, there were no players across this, or very little sales enablement technologies as we see them today in this space. A couple of startups, a couple of people looking this way, but we really some of our stuff we found we had to build it first, but now see that there's some commercial offerings out there. So definitely, it's great to see a lot of investment in space. I think the study shows the value that people are seeing and how it can come together. There still is, to your point of the confusion, I wouldn't say that we see anybody who's just nailed all the aspects of what need to come together. As you mentioned, consolidating the experience. We talked about it in this study around coming together through your CRM. Where are the places that sales and customers already go to get information, or where do they already interact, and start to get into their natural workflow rather than having to be such a hard change to learn a new behavior to go places. The one other thing I'd add, just future looking for us and definitely where we're going, is modeling and mimicking along the customer journey and wherever they're going digital. So whatever we're using for social interactions, whenever we're following customers in their interactions with us as the company or with our partners, how do we leverage all those as signals and analytics to start getting even tighter with what's effective, what should we be positioning to a customer, and at which point in their journey are they on?
That's great. I want to answer a quick question. Robert asked a question, which I think we answered in the first minute. How do I get the study, and will the presentation be shared? The presentation, in fact, will be recorded and live at the same link that you came to today, I think. That's right. And then the study is available, I think, at Brainshark, at Forbes Insights. There was a URL on that. So I wanted to make sure that everyone had access to the study and knew that this recording would come out. Christina asked a good question, obviously a practical question. Who here on this call has had success getting leadership buy-in? We talked a lot about leading companies treating productivity as a C-level issue. Joe, as a CEO yourself, or Jeff, what advice would you give other executives? What degree of C-level CMO support have you guys received in your efforts to date?
Yeah, this is Joe, Steve. I can tell you what we're seeing from our side of it, which is a provider, and some of the things that we've seen with our customers, and I'm sure Jeff can, speak to, his side of it as well. But, we've seen three things that seem to be very important on the C-level commitment side of things. And the first is that commitment. Someone really needs to be assigned to be responsible for it, and then, give them authority to make it happen. So having that C-level executive say, yeah, we really want to do this, and we're going to, provide that person to spearhead it and take care of it. But they also, as an executive, I think what we've seen is they need to promote it, they need to champion it, because people tend to listen sometimes more to the right or wrong, to the C-level executives, and then they'll start to carry that down almost as gospel. And then the third thing, too, is you have to fund it. That you just can't expect that it will go on by itself or magically happen. So you really should be allocating budget to it. Those are the three things that we've generally seen from a high-level work.
I'll add in a little bit, Steve and Joe. One, it's nice that you're now seeing studies, research, and some consultants that are actually able to influence a little bit at those C levels to actually show some case studies where are people actually seeing the return, where are these investments paying off. So there is more of a dialogue around that, which helps. But then as well, in our case, sometimes as well, it's bottoms up. It's a prove it mentality. So, where you can get your data, where you can show how it's coming together, and who's using, what's being used, where it's having an impact. And I think key for us was actual salespeople providing the research, providing the quotes, and advocating through kind of structured research that gave us the lift to say, hey, we're not making this up and doing something on behalf of sales. We're doing this with sales, and they love it. And so it shows in how they adopt and use the platforms.
That's great. I've got a couple other questions. It talks about the role of sales enablement. You have the luxury, Jeff, of actually having a sales enablement role, responsibility, hopefully budget. I guess the question is, if you don't have a sales enablement role, in the absence of a sales enablement role, what can organizations do, or how do they go about setting up a job function like yours?
Yeah, it was sales enablement was a function that was created here at Cisco a little over 3 years ago. But and partnering together and learning with other companies that I've looked at, and it was born out of combinations of a sales operations, traditional sales operations, if you roll right into Joe's opening statements around really focusing on productivity or the operations of commissions, how you set up territories, how you turn on some mobile apps, et cetera. So it's a combination of kind of sales ops, but then some strategy and planning. And then really what I think is key is you don't have to have all of the functions represented inside of the sales enablement function. So like a marketing, like a sales training, your demonstrations team, et cetera. But you have to have representatives and strong partnerships together with those. So sales enablement for us sits inside of sales, inside of the strategy and planning. But so even if you had a sales ops function or a sales training and sales readiness function, sales enablement could sit there as well. But again, it's a strong partnership with marketing and the other people that are creating content as kind of your first lift in success.
That's great. I'd like to talk, there's a good question in here on when are marketers or how are marketers going to start to create content for the back of the funnel or the later stages of the sales and marketing process. I'll chime in for a moment, and then I welcome Joe and and Jeff to chime in. So this is a pretty important question. Traditionally, marketing is a front of the funnel exercise, brand building, client engagement. As organizations start to adopt marketing cloud and digital channels, they have the opportunity to go deeper into the dialogue. And a lot of marketing organizations are connecting the dots, realizing that validation content, for example, ROI models, case studies, thought leadership content, can be valuable at the back of the sales process to demonstrate that a solution is worth buying, help internal buyers to build a consensus for purchase, or even in the service organization where people are looking at upgrades and cross-sell. So organizations like channel marketing organizations, content operations are starting to do content audits and tagging and editorial agendas that start to take feedback like the type that Jeff is creating from the field, saying we need this type of validation, reinforcement, something to move the sales process forward. So as these digital channels get activated, like the one Jeff built, and as feedback from sales comes in saying this is working or this is a gap, organizations are starting to collect those into editorial agendas and start to adapt, repurpose, or actually create net new content for the back of the sales funnel. A couple of the CMOs that we interviewed in the course of doing this and other research said that, I have to look at where the tonnage of my conversations are, and for a lot of organizations, like Boeing or software, a lot of that is happening in technical support, so people are getting wise to provisioning that. The mechanisms by which they do that is an editorial team, and I think Jeff has done something like that. We're starting to see CMOs roll up product, training, and service into hard and soft content organizations. We're starting to see people pulling in subject matter experts who are expensive engineers who are generally used late in the sales cycle and try to package what they say. I know they use Brainshark for that a lot, so that they don't have to get on a plane and be in the meeting. They can be on a tablet and accomplish the same thing, or be in many places at once. So I think it's an interesting question, and form follows function. The feedback loop, that digital connections, where we can actually get measurement and feedback on what content is working, where there are gaps, is starting to create an appetite for content that extends deeper and deeper into the funnel, and I think that's just an important trend. Does Joe or Jeff want to amplify on that answer? Because I thought it was a pretty good question. I don't know if I answered it well.
Yeah, this is, I'll take a shot at part of it. Content, from our perspective, what we're seeing, content's a big issue, and it's a big issue and a big opportunity. And there's many different, ways you can look at it. You can look at it from the types of content that you've got. I mean, you touched on this a little bit, Steve. Is it, marketing content, and does it need to be, redesigned or tailored for more of the back-end sales type of situations? You've got the type of content. There are various different formats of content, not just in the format, but also is it designed for different devices, whether it's phones or PCs. Generally, what we're seeing is that we think content's a challenge and an opportunity. When we talk to our customers in the market, generally the first thing we find is that everyone kind of throws up their hands and says, boy, we've just got so much content, we don't know what to do with it. And from a poor sales rep's perspective, it's they either can't find it, or they can't find the right information, or it's out of date. It's in 20 different places. So finding content is a real issue. So oftentimes when we talk to customers, the first conversation is around the audit of the content. Is let's take an inventory and how much of it do we really need, and then what can we do to take a look at helping the content find the rep, right, as opposed to the rep trying to find the content. So there are some new technologies out today that help reps while they're working in the CRM system. The CRM system and the content system look at who are you talking to, who is the customer, what level are they, what stage of the sales cycle, what products, and then it recommends the type of content that a sales rep should either learn before having a conversation, because there's a lot of sales rep learning is done at the last moment. What kind of content should they use to lead a discussion, and what kind of content should they use to follow up? And then the last piece of it too is that, and you touched on this, is the digitization of content is really important, not just so you can see more compelling content and deliver it lots of different ways, but if it's digital, you can track it, and that's a whole separate conversation as around sales analytics. But I think being able to track it and get feedback as to what content is used at certain places and what content actually works. Meaning, boy, if we use this piece of content at this certain stage of the sales cycle, it'll move to the next stage 82% of the time. So content's a big issue that we could probably spend an hour talking on ourselves, but those are the things that we're seeing. I'm sure Jeff has lots of comments on that too.
I do. I get into the content, and I see Robert has chimed in here as well, wanting to make sure that we clarify what we're talking about, content. So it's great. Actually, we at Cisco, we went around and around for a little while saying, what exactly is sales enablement content? So for us, it was, the marketing collateral, which would be, hey, I've got a deck that speaks to a business decision maker. I've got a deck that speaks to a technical decision maker. I may have some of the, what are the at a glance is what we kind of call our, hey, what's my quick solution overview or product overview, data sheets, et cetera, is one. Content also can be training, so recorded training or on-demand training, even demonstrations and proposals. All of that we kind of lumped into a bucket called content, but it's all things that kind of support the salesperson in there, and it's intended for either something I present to the customer or something I do to prepare myself to present to the customer or engage in that. On the point of the later stage content, one trend we're definitely seeing is, particularly in a large global company such as ourselves, people want content that is closer and more relevant to either their geography, their local language, their industry, or the type of buyer that they're talking to. So more content, case studies that are not just generic case studies about a large American corporation, but hey, I need a case study that deals with Japan manufacturing customer and also is aware of local regulations, local buying practices, et cetera. Something that's truly localized, not just something that's translated into the local language. So we definitely get feedback in where we're actually tuning and starting to put more of the content creation closer to kind of where those geographies or the specialties of I now need content that is tuned towards my particular industry. So we're moving out from just the traditional IT buyer to I need you to tell me about why Internet of Everything matters in farming or agricultural industry or mining industry, as an example. So those are great ways that we're adjusting, and that content can live all along that life cycle. So it could be for thought leadership, or it could be down to I'm having the last meeting with my customer, and all of a sudden they hit me with a left turn, and they've been talking to my competitor, and I need to quickly get the competitive fact-based sheet to tell me how to respond and how to position where my solution's superior.
Great. I'd like to, wrap up with a couple of clarifying questions. One is the audience would like to understand our unit of analysis. When we talk about sales productivity in this research and in this presentation, are we talking, and at Cisco, are we talking about the productivity of a sales rep or the line marketing management, or both? What's the scorecard at Cisco, Jeff?
It's a simple answer, both. In the content that we presented a little earlier ago, we talked about the example of a sales rep being able to find the materials that they need to get the effective conversation with their customer, dropping down from the one study that we've run says down from 17 minutes down to 3 minutes. So in that, we're particularly executing on giving time back to a salesperson. When we look at it from a management perspective, say, hey, how do I get those efficiencies running across there so that I get more time back for my salespeople to be talking with customers, but then as well, for the sales leadership or for the marketing leadership or anybody in the content producer, how am I getting the best materials and the things that seem to be most effective in front of and used and adopted by the rest of the sales team? So I'm a product specialist selling collaboration technologies in the healthcare vertical. What's the top 2 or 3 messages and demonstrations that seem to resonate in that market is where it's now the management is able to get those messages and scale them and make sure they're getting adopted and pushed, if you will.
I'll amplify that. If I could do a amalgamum of my last 5 clients, we just presented some metrics. The answer is both, but different. So on a rep side, that's about 70% of their weight, 80% of their weight. And some of the things they're looking for is a demonstrated increase in business acumen, that in fact they're credible and addressing client pain in those meetings, and they can want to tell that by the types of conversations. We're seeing empirical lift that if there is consistent execution of sales plays, follow-up, or methodology. If you execute the follow-up, give the comparative analysis that Jeff talked about, answer emails, refer to the analyst internally. There's significant lift there. And then just, execution of the sales process in the advance. Often there are 5 or 4 follow-up items, and a lot of them don't get done. It's not rocket science here. If you talk the client's language, draw upon the resource inside the organization, be consistent with the plays and the methods that you've created, and just do the follow-up. There's significant effectiveness to reinforce what Joe said earlier to be had. When it comes to marketing managers, it's a different story. What we're hearing is, A, they have no time. B, they have no time for ride-alongs. If they're lucky, they can be in 1% of all sales meetings. And probably most important is they barely understand the value selling methodology and the approaches that they're trying to teach other folks. And so to the degree that they can be leveraged by a system that makes those recommendations, that does a virtual ride-along. The beauty of content and the types of systems we're talking about here today is they throw off behavioral data, which said what actually happened in that meeting, what was shown, and what follow-ups happened. And that, in our mind is a virtual ride-along. You can coach against that information because you can actually see what they did as opposed to getting in the car and going with them. So 2 things on marketing management. Can we relieve pressure on them from a sales training and reinforcing of the methodology, since they barely understand it better than the people they're teaching? And second, can we give them more information to coach by, seeing 100% of sales calls instead of less than 1% of sales calls, so that they can actually, by email or follow up and not being there, do the same type of coaching they would do in a ride-along? So I thought it was a good question. There's a lot of nuance there. We're getting down to the turn of the hour here. I have one more question. It's a combination of 3 questions. One is, let's talk about CRM, Salesforce.com or other. How effective is CRM as a primary way for distributing and recommending content to sales, service, partner, field, other organizations? And if you do deliver the type of sales enablement content we're talking about here, do you see an uptick in adoption, utilization, and ROI of CRM? Anyone got some feedback on that?
Well, we have a point of view on that, Steve. This is Joe. We think, in general, what we see out there is that there's not as much true adoption by sales reps of the CRM as management would like. And when you kind of come down to it, I guess it's not a big surprise, right? Because if sometimes there's not a lot in it for a sales rep to use the CRM system. But we do believe that there is a real opportunity going forward to help a sales rep sell more. And using the CRM system as the not just the system of record, but really the place that a sales rep goes to work and does their work every day, can have a huge benefit, because when you're in the CRM system, it knows a lot about who you're talking to, what you're talking about, where you are in the stage of the sale. So you can gather a lot of transactional information that other systems can then use to say, all right, how do we enable a more high-value conversation? And, I heard Jeff talk a lot about this earlier today, which was, how do we provide that right high-value, relevant content, not if I'm in Japan, I want to know about something that's going on over there, not some American company, but even much more refined than that. So we can understand what transactional events are happening in the CRM. We can combine it with content to recommend the right things. But then the other part of it, I believe also, is that we can start to use content as a proxy for a conversation, because I think sales is a real black hole out there today. Then that people managers in particular just don't know an awful lot about what sales reps are talking about, what's actually happening. But if we start to use content as a proxy for that, and then we compare it to things that are happening in the transactions of the CRM, we can shine a real light on it. And I think that's what management would like to see. The CRM is more strategic product, and then also get more visibility into what's happening.
Well, it looks like we're down to the end of the hour. Jeff, did you want to say something?
Well, I just share, I think to the question of the CRM adoption, of course, the answer is it depends, and it's what culture is driving across. Are the reps getting value? And I kind of tend to pivot. I come from sales as well as I pivot towards I will go places where I get value. So this is a way to try and draw people to the CRM and say, and what we've seen is not only is it go put some stuff in the CRM and update your opportunities so the management can beat you with a stick or can have a better view of the business. But now, if you put things in, you will actually get back the content. We are still candidly struggling a little bit that all of that comes together exactly as we want it to be, but we're trying to consolidate the experiences so more and more stuff can take place, and we are a Salesforce customer, can take place where it's a logical flow and a logical place for sales to go every day rather than just the place where I update my forecast or I'm doing a quote for a customer. So to Joe's point of we start to see things that are proxies for activity that are taking place, we're also looking for those for can we see things that signal to us there's customer conversation going on and not have to be a manual burden on the rep to update the information, but that things are kind of automatically logged for them. So lots of opportunity I see here going forward in the space.
Well, look, it looks like we're out of time. Again, there's a recording of this webinar. I think Joe gave us contact information. I hope this was productive, but I believe that we're going to have to stop. So thank you so much for attending, and I hope you saw value in our presentation.